Good day. Welcome to the Strong Ambition podcast. And we're going to dive into losing 120 pounds. What is important for female hormonal health in the diet? And is organic food a scam? With Melissa Ostash. This is a wonderful conversation because Melissa is a fellow online coach and she specializes in nutrition for females. She's very concerned about female health. And she had some major challenges with an online coach herself who pushed her way too far. There's a great story here about her journey and how she battled to lose so much weight. She had a lot of difficulties to go through it. She even experienced a really extreme coach. And she also has some great knowledge for more practicality of sustainability in a diet. And we dive into so many other topics because it's always great to talk about these things with other online coaches and hearing their opinions. We talk about what she's changed her mind on over the years. We talk about what she really sees a problem with on social media. And with that, we're going to talk about organic and what people consider healthy food. We're going to talk about the Maha movement and so much more. Overall, this was a wonderful conversation because it just flowed very well, very naturally between two coaches, really understanding these problems that people have. And so I think you're going to get a ton out of this. So without further ado, here is Melissa Ostash. Good day, Melissa. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
I'm not too bad, Rylan. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. I love having fellow online coaches on and to be able to just, talk shop, talk about the fun stuff. But why don't you tell the listeners and viewers more about you and how you got to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, so my name, like mentioned, Melissa Ostash. I'm an online nutrition coach. I do have my personal training, but I don't really practice it. It's kind of more for my personal, I guess, use now. More so focusing on the nutrition coaching side of things because long story short, I have successfully lost 120 pounds, and I used to be that crash dieter, that yo-yo dieter, that girl that just wanted the quick fix, right? So I have to say it took a while for me to get where I am today. And yeah, now I just really want to share that knowledge with other women because I completely understand the frustrations of being sold something new and shiny and flashy and falling for it and then being disappointed and not understanding why it's not working and feeling like like they're the problem, I'm the problem, I'm broken, right?
That's really big. And I love that that's your mission. That's huge. That's a huge journey to go through. So I'm curious, how long ago did you have to go through that journey? Like, how old were you? And let's talk about that process.
So essentially, I grew up overweight. Probably around grade five-ish, I started gaining weight. First off, I am tall, so I wasn't only the tallest person in my grade, but I was also the largest, unfortunately. But yeah, around that age, I just started putting on the pounds, and it had to do a lot with how I was raised. It was a little bit challenging childhood. I had a very narcissistic father, and I grew up watching my mom turn to food for emotional eating and kind of seeing her do the diet trends, whether it's that ever embedded slim, quick, slim, fast powder sitting in the pantry or her doing just salads and stuff like that. I really didn't understand or know nutrition. So fast forward to high school, let's just say I grew up in a very small rural community. I went to high school in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. It's a little bit bigger community, it's not the largest, but still ended up going to high school there and was again overweight at this point. And I really identified then as the fun, fat, outgoing girl. So I turned into a partier. And that was kind of what I thought was going to make me friends and everything else. And at the same time, I was just losing myself more and more. And then I graduated, went to college, and I still carried that persona on. So I ended up getting actually a really bad a sickness or something. And I went to the doctor and they did the blood pressure thing. And they're just like, you have high blood pressure. And I'm like, that's great.
Mm.
And it kind of clicked for me there that it was like, hey, you need to start doing something. So I would say 2012 was the first time I signed up for that gym membership and kind of started working towards improving my lifestyle physically. But it took years I always say my weight loss journey was a 10-year process because I did majority of it on my own. And I did the crash diets, the fat burners, oh my gosh, the keto cabbage soup diet. Yeah, I did a lot.
I only recently heard about the soup diet, and it like blew me away that a client said like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" I'm like, "Well, first off, I'm kind of saddened that this is a thing still. Like, if you have the diet, like the carnivore diet, the keto diet, like, there's going to be caveats. Like, this is probably not going to work for most people. And then hearing the cabbage soup diet is like, is there more to this thing? Like, are they putting something in the cabbage? No, it's a cabbage soup diet. And I'm just like, how is this even a thing anymore? Like, to just starve yourself, like, it's just like ridiculous. But I totally empathize because I grew up overweight, but I at least didn't have to come from like a much heavier weight, and I grew into a better fitness because it
Mhm.
came around the right time in my life. But you do so much on your own. You're trying to figure out things on your own, and oh, this is a slim fast, and you think maybe that's something you're supposed to do. I was doing like protein shakes early, but like not necessarily fat burners, but people told me this is supposed to help your metabolism. This is supposed to help you, and what is supposed to and what's not. I've seen, remember the green coffee bean, like always new things
Yeah.
come out, and people want the pill. People just want the quick fix. And there's so many times that I meet individuals like yourself that had to lose, 50, 100 pounds or so. And they say it's like it's up and down, and you try a lot of things. So let's talk about that journey, because the up and downs I think are really interesting to hear about, the trials and tribulations, and because yo-yo dieters have something really good about them. Even though they're yo-yo dieting, it means they're not quitting, and that's
Yeah.
like a really important character trait. It's like these people are trying so many things, and the worst thing is they get persecuted. Oh, you're trying something new, trying something new. They're fucking trying, and
Yeah.
and that eventually does give you the best probability of doing something. Even if it's a person, you're like, this person that is doing all these crazy things, they're the most likely to actually change their lifestyle. So I'm curious about that journey. So take us on the journey a little bit. Some things that kind of work, and then maybe you took a step back. Some things that work a little better, and take a step back. So take us on that journey a little bit for you.
Yeah. So throughout the remaining years of my college life, I would consistently go to the gym, but I was doing that wrong. So I was definitely that person there working out, lifting, and then I would spend like an hour on the treadmill. So I was spending like 2 hours in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, that's not realistic or sustainable in the long run. But here I am thinking that that's what you had to do because, again, I didn't hire a coach. I was just kind of doing my own thing, looking up workouts on Pinterest. So yeah, that was my lifestyle for the longest time. And I would do good during the week, but yet I still couldn't drop that like fun, outgoing party girl. So come weekends, you would find me at like, well, not even just weekends, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah, it was just going out, going hard, eating chicken wings, eating greasy bar food afterwards. And I was seeing progress, but that progress was coming so incredibly slow. So that was kind of honestly my lifestyle for college. And once I started toning it down towards the end of it, I actually had like friends comment being like, I miss the old you. So it was almost an internal battle of being like, okay, do I focus on my health or do I start like still keeping people happy because I was a major people pleaser? And so for to have my friends tell me this, it was very hard for me to be like, I'm trying to better myself and improve my health because I shared my health concerns with them. They didn't care. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it made me like question, are these genuine true friendships or are you just like partying with me? So that was also like a little hurdle to go over. And I would say I handled it quite well because I stuck to my gut and kind of started limiting my alcohol consumption and really limiting to maybe like Saturday nights versus Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? So I was still going out, but it wasn't 4 out of 7 days a week, right? So that was a first step there. And then I went to school in Alberta, so I actually had to complete a practicum there. And I lived in like Whitecourt, Alberta. So it's kind of north of Edmonton in the sticks. Again, I didn't know a lot of people. It's an oil field town. I stuck to myself, signed up for the gym, and would go hit the gym as soon as it opened at 5 a.m. Got to know some of them. I called them the oil field moms and wives. They were a very welcoming bunch, but again, I just had that bad relationship with exercise. I felt like I needed to discipline my body, and I was spending, again, like close to 2 hours every morning in the gym. And I wasn't really giving myself even adequate rest days either. Like I would try to take one day off at least, maybe one day off. Not always, but I would try to. And nutrition wise, I was not doing good. I was listening to my fitness pal saying 1,200 calories, so I was probably under fueling a good portion of the time. Protein, had no clue. Like when I say it wasn't even a thought process for me. I was a religious calorie counter, and I'm like, you know what? As long as I'm in a deficit, I'm in a deficit, and that's all that matters. Well, fast forward even more, once I ended up moving back to Saskatchewan and then eventually Manitoba, I started working with an online nutrition coach, and he did home workout programs as well. And that's kind of when I really dialed it in and actually went into a reverse diet starting off with him, because I'm like, I want to be strong. I really want to start switching from being the smallest me to like feeling strong and genuinely good. And that was actually really successful there. And I made progress. I made progress with my strength and everything else. But then he actually really taught me about the importance of protein and macros and how you feel your body matters. And this was like a whole new world to me. And I was just intrigued by macronutrients and, like, again, feeling your body, hence why my Instagram handle is the Fit and Field Life, because that's my thing now, is just to make sure I have energy in the tank to take on whatever I'm doing. So yeah, but what he then kind of embedded in me was the we don't miss mentality. And once he got me onto my deficit, it was a quite steep deficit for the activity level I was doing. And he was actually encouraging me to do those old habits that I actually dropped. So, long story short, he was like, okay, do your workouts, don't miss your workouts, but do extra cardio because you're in a deficit and we want to get you down to your weight as soon as possible. And I was burning out, and he kept me in that state for 7 months. And yeah, yeah, he kept me in that state for 7 months. And I don't know if this is TMI or not, but I ended up getting HA at that point. So I went from one extreme, being overweight, to then the extreme of being over exercising, under fueling, and ending up losing my cycle because I wanted to hit that number, and I was being coaxed by my coach that you're almost there. That number is 5 pounds away. It was literally 5 pounds away. I had the goal of like 165, and yeah, and he would just tell me, keep going a little bit longer. And I would share with him that, okay, my hair's falling out. I'm tired. I'm not sleeping well. Like, my energy levels, my progression with strength training, it was getting depleted. Like, I was so freaking tired. And he wanted the before and after pictures. So that was kind of my run in with coaching. But actually, when I started working with him, I dived into taking a few ISSA classes where I got my, again, personal training and my first nutrition coach certification. And I started learning more and more. And I'm like, okay, we're doing this wrong. So yeah, I ended up having to drop him as a coach because he really didn't understand women's health, long story short, even though he advertised as a women's health coach and like hormones and everything else. And I now strive to be the coach that he wasn't to me also. It gave me like a guideline there. So now I just really make sure that I prioritize my clients' needs after getting certified and taking a few coaches, including the Functional Nutrition and Metabolism School by Sam Miller and the Girls Gone Strong, because I really want to focus on female health and just knowing how our bodies are ever so different or ever so slightly different from the male body, and make sure we're not missing, or I'm not missing things that can go missed by coaches that really don't maybe pay attention as much to like hormone health, PCOS, all that stuff there, right? So yeah, fast forward to today, I've been like maintaining my weight, but I've also been helping other women realize that you don't need to be in a deficit for like 7 months straight, and excessive cardio and strength training and going to work out while on holidays and then yeah, snowboarding the same day and just burning yourself out.
Right. No, that's a great message. And that's a terrible experience to have a coach push you that hard, especially because you mentioned he wanted the before and afters. And that's
Yeah.
super unethical that you're saying that he is supposed to be a coach for women's health. And it's very important for people to recognize that if you stay in a deficit, like very consistent, like it sounded like you were, for more than 3 to 4 months at a time, like some people, if they're very overweight, they can do it. But by the sounds of it, you've been training, you've been through it, like it just took a toll on you. And literally, like once your point that you're losing your cycle, that's not hormone healthy. Like it's just not. And like, what does that 5 pounds matter, right? Like you've already like probably already lost a ton of weight with them. And it should have been, a conception from his is like, hey, you're doing great. Let's take a break. Let's make this a way to own your weight. And that is terrible to hear that you have to go through that experience, but it's valuable when you go through bad experiences because it makes you a better coach. And realizing where, I've gone wrong is exactly what I make sure my clients don't do. And similarly yourself, I imagine. I'm quite curious from what you mentioned that there's, important details that someone needs to pay attention to that makes it inherently different from men to women. And I would be really open to know what that is, because from my perception, and this is why I'm not, the greatest coach for it, a lot of the nutritional ideas are the same, but you have to take into concepts how the hormones are affecting the individual and their experience. And so can you go a little deeper? Because I imagine nutritionally, it's going to be very similar, but what other details should someone pay attention to when it comes to weight loss in women dealing with managing their hormones better?
I think a big red flag to pay attention to and just monitor your clients is making sure they're not doing everything low fat or fat free.
Yeah.
And that was something he strongly encouraged, because calorie deficit, go low fat, you could have higher volume. And I was doing that. I was eating extremely low fat or opting for the no fat options. And fats are incredibly important for hormone health, and incredibly important. And that was never shared with me. So I'm thinking, you know what? I'm eating lots of fruit and veggies. I'm eating high volume, lean protein, all that stuff. But it just wasn't enough for my body. It really wasn't. And even like carbs, he was kind of like more so promoting that I should have, again, like almost, it was almost like borderline, like I was keto, to be honest, because it was just like low carb this, low carb that. You still need carbs at least 130 grams, he said, like at least. But yeah, it was opt for like the keto wraps and stuff like that. And like, again, they have their fit. I find, like, again, I'm not bashing them or saying that you don't have to consume them, but it was very extreme. It was just low everything, high protein. I'm trying to remember, my protein that he had me assign was, I think it was close to 180 grams.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was very high protein, moderate carbs, and like very, very low fat.
Yeah, so just a really low calorie diet. Do you remember roughly how many calories it would have been?
So for me, I do know it was, he had to range from 1,400 to 1,500 calories.
Oh, that's that's
And
that's
I should
low.
mention I'm 5'11" as well, so
Yeah,
I'm not a small petite girl by any means.
yeah. Yeah, and even just at a female weighing at trying to weigh 165 pounds, like,
Mhm.
it's not perfect, but 10 times their body weight is aggressive for that person. And yeah, you can probably guess that when someone's trying to do like those lower calories, or someone's prescribing those lower calories, it's like they're not taking into consideration where the person's metabolism at. And then there is something really important for people to pay attention to, that there's a sweet zone for everything. It almost gets to be too difficult for people to pay attention to, because it's like calorie deficit, calorie deficit, calorie deficit. Like, this is all over social media now, right? But then a lot of people are fighting it. It's like, oh no, it's hormones. It's like, yes, hormones are a factor, but it comes down to the calorie deficit. And then it gets lost in translation, that it's like, it should be said it's the right calorie deficit. It's the right amount of fats. It's the right amount of carbs. It's the right amount of protein. And it's not just a calorie deficit, because it's not sustainable. It's not healthy. And it's walking that fine line between, okay, just a little less, and then we're good for a long time. But if you go too low, or even as you mentioned, too low fat, like, so one of the things that, I think, like, I understood this over the last couple of years, but I'll admit I didn't pay attention to it when I was younger, was that men or women, but for sure women, need 20% of that calorie deficit of the coming from fats. Like, that is your minimum effective dose, at least 20% for hormonal function. And so this is why deficits are hard on anyone, even if it's done well controlled, even if it's all measured, because you're not getting as much fats in your diet. And men or women, they're going to have their hormones drop, especially if you have like almost none. And so I can totally see that being a terrible experience. And you'll totally notice once you go into calorie maintenance, or back to putting some more body weight on, your hormones feel better, you have better sex drive, you have better energy. And it's super important. And it's difficult too, because that's a part of the details. People need a calorie track already. That's difficult. They need to have whole foods. That's difficult. And then you got to say, oh yeah, make sure it's at least 20% fat, and then make sure you have this many grams per. And so it becomes nuanced, and that's the challenge. But that is also the value in calorie tracking, I think, in a long period of time. I'm curious, because you've had such a difficult time with doing your own calorie tracking, the far end. So you've gone to the extreme. You had a coach that grinded you on it. Where do you fall now, or over like how you help your own clients in coaching? Where do you fall in calorie tracking? Do you do it sometimes? Do you not do it? Because I know it can be a very debatable topic for some people.
Yeah, so I still advocate, and I am a macronutrient coach for my nutrition coaching. I do recommend macronutrients as the go-to, because I think there's a lot to learn about how you create that plate, and understanding your portions. Because that was my biggest thing growing up, is I didn't understand a portion. Do you think I would read the food label? I'd be like, oh, this is what this must weigh. Like, and I would just eyeball it, and I had no clue. So I think macros and learning macros is a really good opportunity to just sit down and better understand your food, because then even when eating out, you do get that mind plate connection, and you can determine, okay, I mean, this is like 2 times the serving than a typical serving should look like, etc. So I am still, I still on occasion track macros myself, but I do prescribe to my clients to track macros, and I am a big advocate of not going super low calories when they are in a deficit. I like a sustainable, slow approach with, of course, diet breaks happening over, I don't know, give it a couple, or not a couple weeks, but a couple months, or 2 to 3 months, so that they have that reset, and then they can kind of go back into it, restructure, and see where they are at that point of their life. But for me, definitely advocating slow, sustainable weight loss. I don't want anyone to do the quick drop and stay there forever and always like I did, because I don't want anyone to go through what I did. It's not fun. Between like the hair, the acne, I felt like I was like a 13-year-old but losing my hair.
Oh man.
Yeah. So it was interesting. And lots of times too, when I do give my recommendations, I have my clients focus on, of course, protein. And then I like saying caloric budget, because it's like money in the bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or you withdraw so much, and then you're left with zero basically at the end of the day. You could look at it that way. And for carbs and fats, I notice a lot of time to begin with, especially when women start tracking, is that their fats are higher to begin with. So I like to say, let your carbs and fats fluctuate to make up that remaining budget to fill up your calories. But for first and foremost, hit that protein. And then after a couple weeks, then I start talking about like fiber because I don't want to overwhelm them with everything like that.
Mhm.
But once that's set in, I definitely keep an eye on the fats because lots of times too, I notice it, and I think that's just how our society is that people think fats make them fat. And it's not necessarily the fats, it's going in a calorie surplus, right? And yeah, fats add up really quick, but just because you eat fats, it doesn't mean you're going to get fat.
Mhm.
And I hear that on lots of check-ins actually, where they'll be like, I need to dial in my fats. I need to dial in my fats. And I'm like, no, like maybe we can reduce them a little bit, but like don't think you need to just cut them out. And I try explaining that to them because yeah, hormone health.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable to make people appreciate what you need in your food. And it's interesting because you do the macro tracking, and I think I just never done it. So I do calorie tracking, and I'm always about protein versus energy. Like that's just the whole school of thought, and we keep it simplistic. And I give people rough percentages. As long as you get in this range of protein, you hit this many calories and you make it up. But then again, you add in those things like, okay, now you've been tracking, you're confident. Tell me where your fat percentage is. Tell me where your fiber is. You add in those extra details later on to make sure that they're not going too low fat or not enough fiber. Because you'll be like, hey, my digestion isn't good. It's like, well, how much fiber do you have? Like 15. That's a problem, right? So you got to add into those things. But it's interesting because, I hear some people talk about how fast they can actually add up the macros. And I can't because I don't have that trigger in my head of like this many fats, carbs. I can ballpark it, but I'm not that accurate. And it's a different way of looking at food, right? So when people ask me routinely, like, where should my carbs be or should my fats be? I don't care. Where's your calories? Is usually where I'm at. And I'll tell them, okay, but I do want your percentage at the end of the day to be an appropriate fat percentage. Usually what I encourage people to do is to actually play around with, not that it works 100%, but it can kind of work with metabolic flexibility. I think some people, or maybe it's just me mentally in the system of having more protein and fat earlier in the day, and then protein, fat, and carbs midday, and then protein and carbs later in the day will automatically make it so that you have more fat density early, but then you can make up for more carbs later when people might have less fluctuation. And you can fluctuate it any which way, but it's a way that people experiment with their foods more, giving them that kind of structure. But like you mentioned, it's still like, end of the day, it's how they can make it fit their life sustainably. And I think that's something even for myself, that listening to how other people do it, you got the intermittent fasting coaches, like listening to how they do it. It was a really good argument that they made of like, they don't see tracking as a sustainable lifestyle. They don't see it as something that people can do forever. But I think there's a percentage of people who can, just like any fat loss scheme, just like intermittent fasting, not everyone can do it forever. I'm curious on your perception. Do you currently track like long term? And do you think you'll always track calories long term?
No, I don't. Even when I tell my clients, my goal is to outwork me as a coach, basically, so that they don't need me, because I want them to get so confident and comfortable of like having those moments where it's like, no, I know what this is. I know what a serving is.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when I start working for them a little bit longer, I will do, okay, let's practice a weekend of mindfulness. Let's take 2 days off from tracking and then see where that scale weighs in, because I like looking at I always say scale, daily weigh-ins are great. Don't look at it as it telling the whole story, but look at it as data, because you could learn from it, especially those trends. And yeah, you could kind of see when somebody maybe overindulged a little bit more on carbs or had saltier foods or something like that, because it'll go up ever so slightly. And then you'll notice, especially on the weeks that they're not tracking, it'll go down. And you're like, okay, well, you're kind of sitting at maintenance now, right? You have those little ups and downs, but it's not something to stress about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, scale's a tool in the toolbox. And like I said, tracking macros, I don't want anyone to do it forever and always. I want them to just get really comfortable in understanding what portions look like. And I also do share a few resources, whether it's practicing that plate method. So quarter plate protein, quarter plate starchy whole grain, and half a plate veggies, just to kind of even rule of thumb a bit that way, or even the precision nutrition coaching. They have a really good resource that uses that hand method. So cupped hand, palm, etc. I teach them that as well because I'm like, I want you guys just to be confident and not be like, oh my gosh, I can't eat out in public without a scale.
Okay,
Because
absolutely.
yeah, that's basically how I was initially coached with macros, was just to be everything. We do not miss was kind of my old coach's slogan, and I'm like, okay, no, we do miss.
Yeah,
So
you gotta teach people how to fail. That's actually a super
yeah,
important skill. You gotta teach people how to miss. You gotta teach people, okay, if you can control your circumstances to understand what you're eating, that's awesome. That's what it is. It's research to pay attention to your food and, do check-ins. And then if it's a busy day, eyeball it. Absolutely. You've seen it like a dozen times this week. And then you have some occasions where you're going out, eat. Like you're having some
yeah,
fun with your family and friends. That's an occasion to eat and to,
holidays, all
yeah,
those things.
all those things. And I think at that point, there is a level of intuition when you've eaten too much that you can, hey, it's your fourth plate going up. That might be too much, right? And so there's other habits that you got to worry about. The calorie tracking wouldn't even help you if you're going for a fourth serving, right? It's more about like appreciating the day-to-day stuff that you can control and then knowing how to, as you mentioned, mindful eating is massively underappreciated. And I think just the mindful term doesn't tell people enough of what it is, but it makes sense. It's trying to really appreciate and think about your food, feel your food, and be more understanding of what you're feeling in your body and seeing every time you're eating, rather than just go, 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 we're grabbing this, grabbing that, and using your old intuition. You're essentially trying to kind of navigate to a new intuition. You're trying to reprogram your intuition, and that's what mindful eating can do. So I think that's a wonderful practice that you have, and it's important for people to have. And I think it's great that you said, I want you to outgrow me. I want you to be independent. That's the right way to do it. I'm curious what you would say, because you already had some great, ideas already. I'm curious if you have any other big lessons or kind of things that you wish more people know or you knew in your own fat loss journey that isn't really intuitive to people.
Yeah, so I guess I am that type A personality. So perfection genuinely is madness and it will lead you to burnout. And really listening to your body and recognizing those times that you do need to slow down, because that whole saying, we have the same 24 hours in the day, I used to believe that. And I shake younger version me head like so wrong, because yeah, there's life, there's whether it's in your control or outside of control, you got family, you got loved ones, you're maybe taking care of family, like everyone's on different circumstances. So just to have that naive perspective, or yeah, perspective that there's the same 24 hours in a day, I totally dropped that because I'm like, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, again, just realizing that it's okay to just have times where you just don't need to work out and stuff. And the old version of me would never give myself permission to do so. Like in the last couple of years, my husband and I have actually gone to Europe a couple of times. And I would say it was hard the first trip we did because I'm like, I need to find a gym. I need to go work out and stuff like that. And we're getting like 20,000 steps a day. And I'm like, why am I thinking this way? But it was so like embedded in me, right? To like, you can't miss the gym because you're going to lose muscle mass and stuff like that. And then realizing and learning over the years that it takes more than just a week off the gym to
Yeah.
lose muscle mass.
Yeah.
So,
It takes a lot. People underestimate
yeah,
how little it takes to maintain muscle in a week. And like I actually seen that on your Instagram, all the different places, and it's incredible. And it is hard when you come from coming off the couch and you hear the no pain, no gain. There is a certain point in your life where you need the message to get motivation. And I think certain people need that motivation. Certain people need a message of get out of your comfort zone. You got to move your ass. And then the people who are the yo-yo dieters, the people who've done that time and time again, they need to hear less. They need to hear that it's not on or off. They need to hear that it's shades of gray. It's turning the dial up and down rather than an on and off switch. Because some days if you turn the dial down, it's actually quite manageable. It's like today you can't hit your deficit. That's okay. Today you're in a maintenance. That's okay. Oh, you're in a slight surplus. That's also okay. But that doesn't mean it's a binge day. It's the on off switch that makes things very emotionally detrimental. But if you see things more of like I say, a dial, you turn it up and down, that's just life. Life is going to have ebbs and flows. They're going to have great days and bad days. And it allows a lot more forgiveness in the path. One of the biggest things that even, my sister-in-law, she's done research on recognizing how compassion in high-level athletes, they have compassion for themselves, actually helps them perform better. And I think it's because people can evaluate their problems better and not stay so stuck in emotion and guilt, and then do better sooner. And they don't carry that guilt into the next movement, into the next day. And that's totally going to apply to your nutrition. So I think that's a great mindset that you help people with, because again, like when it comes to yo-yo dieters, it comes to all or nothing people, just that phrase, especially when you own that phrase, I'm an all or nothing person, you just guaranteed you're a nothing person. Like you literally just set yourself up for failure. So I totally appreciate that. I'm curious in the last few years, more recently, because how long have you been coaching now? Actually, better question.
I've been coaching for just over 2 years now, so still fairly new. I'm learning as I go,
Yeah.
but you know what? I like it. I've helped quite a few ladies already, which I'm pretty excited about because I try to keep around 10 clients at a time, just because if I have more imbalancing full-time work, it
Right.
gets to be, and I don't want to miss out on anyone, right? So yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's great. What would you say in the last couple of years, if you have anything come to mind, that maybe you've changed your mind on when it comes to nutrition?
So for nutrition, I would say, again, just even when on holidays and stuff like that, don't be so strict. Don't look at even your nutrition as restriction, because that was always you need to take out, you need to remove, you need to cut. And I'm now like, okay, no, look at what current foods you have and see what you can add to your plate to make it more nourishing. And I really challenge my clients with that, because they're like, some of them ask for meal plans. And again, living now in rural Manitoba, my local co-op doesn't have all the bougie foods, which that's another thing I could talk about. Health foods don't make it necessarily healthy for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Totally.
yeah, but I really advocate of like, what do you have on hand and what can you add to it to make it more nutritious? So is that adding, maybe instead of just doing pasta and pasta sauce, maybe you can add some chicken breast and veggies to make it complete, right? Or even doing the side salad and stuff like that, and just playing around with your foods and really truly getting to know what you can do to them to just spruce them up a bit, so it's not just heavy carbs and like lacking 100% protein, or carbs and fats, right? It's really finding that wholesome approach that you're having a whole nutritious meal versus just, yeah, cutting, restricting, removing.
Great attitude. Add more rather than take away. And if you're
Yeah,
adding more, especially when you add more protein, you naturally eat less. Like
yeah,
when you explain to people, no, actually it's double that amount of chicken that you're used to. That's how much you should be having. No, it's more than 2 eggs. I'm sorry, you're gonna need more than 2 eggs in that meal. And if it's not eggs, then you're gonna want to eat some other protein. And when you start adding these extra foods in, they're like, are you sure I'm not gonna gain weight on this? No, it's actually super nutritious. And a great deal of people actually eat probably in calorie deficits most days. But eventually when they're around the heavily processed food, they have no way of gauging it and probably hungry from eating calorie deficits for a lot of those days. And
yeah.
so it's super valuable when you have that attitude of like, let's add more to each meal, create more value for it, create more fullness and nutrition. And naturally, a lot less food wants to get eaten because you just like Whole foods are a lot more filling. So I want to actually go off of what you mentioned, though, the idea of healthy or bougie foods and not being necessarily a good choice. Let's extrapolate on that. What were you meaning by that?
Um, just I guess there's so many foods that are labeled healthy or like clean eating and stuff like that. And just because you eat those foods doesn't mean you're necessarily going to lose weight. And I had to actually walk through people like my clients through this because they're like, well, I'm buying this. This is considered a superfood. It's like even I'm not victimizing avocados, but they're like, I'm having avocado toast and a couple eggs. And I'm like, okay, but again, like you kind of mentioned, 2 eggs is not enough protein to kickstart your morning in my book. So you want at least 25 to 30 grams so that you're feeling full, satiated, and energized for the day. And especially if you do morning workouts, you want to make sure you're having that protein there too. But yeah, just talking about those foods that are considered health foods, superfoods,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's not going to make a difference if you're not eating it in a deficit and you're trying to lose weight. It's understanding that that deficit really is key for most people. Like really, you need a caloric deficit to lose genuine fat. And some people think that okay, I'm spending money on this food, it's in the health aisle, it costs more than the whatever from the shelf or the aisle. Like, why am I not seeing progress? And it's like, no, like just because it's considered healthy doesn't mean you're going to lose weight.
100%. I love that you pointed out avocado. Probably my least favorite superfood. And I'm not saying it's my least favorite because I enjoy the flavor of it. I think it's super nutritious. It's my least favorite to take that title because of the fact that people misuse it for that exact reason. That is a fat. That is a heavy, dense thing. It's like when people say, "Oh, but I'm having mixed nuts." It's like, "Oh, mixed nuts. Yeah, how many handfuls? Like two or three?" Yeah, you're still low on your protein. I'm sorry, it's not a protein source.
My beloved peanut butter, not a protein source.
Not a protein source, unfortunately. And that, oh, I had a long love affair with protein throughout my peanut butter throughout my 20s, because it can be a healthy fat, but it's like way out a tablespoon. Don't scoop one, and you'll be heartbroken to realize how much it actually is. And that's the really unfortunate thing is like this kind of disconnection between nutrition information and people because you get these ideas. Oh, I thought it was healthy. I thought it was healthy. And I'll have clients that'll ask me, hey, can I eat this? Like, is this healthy? And my answer is usually, what's your protein and calories? And I'll tell you whether or not it's healthy because you can make so many things fit that meal. You tell me you have a piece of pizza and you had it aside with a chicken salad. I'm going to tell you that pizza was healthy for you because it probably gave you, especially if it's in your calorie range, probably gave you some mental satisfaction to eat some pizza while other people were. And then you have micronutrients and you have protein. What's wrong with that meal? Right. And, when people get really dichotomous on whether something's healthy or unhealthy, it's so subjective, right? To the person. Like we know things that are most likely healthy. We know those foods. But just like you said, that avocado, let's say you had that person that had a great meal plan otherwise, and they had a whole avocado that day. Holy shit, that's 300 calories. You're out of your deficit. I'm sorry. You did not work towards your fat loss. And that's just this misconception that you should eat mostly whole foods. It's not saying that, but like the right deficit matters at the right amount. And it's really unfortunate. And especially when people I'll add in just the term organic seems to have way too much fire to it because it's like, hey, this must be a healthy thing. It's organic. And it's like, actually, we don't got any evidence to support that it makes a huge impact. It's more just a peace of mind for you with a higher price tag. So, I mean, with that, let's go into this misconception problem, especially with social media. You and I are both on social media, so we see it a lot. Let's tackle one of your least favorite ideas out there that you think is a massive misconception that people really should pay attention to when it comes to like the social media noise out there.
I might be biased, but you definitely hit the one with organic foods because again, I work in agriculture and I work for a chemical company all the time. So that might be my little stance there, but I don't think people realize that organic foods still get sprayed with pesticides and they actually get sprayed more frequently because the pesticide is not as efficient as what we use in conventional farming practices. So they might be getting sprayed, I don't even know, 5, 6, 7 times. Whereas usually conventional farmers go in one time, maybe two, and it's said and done. But since organic pesticides don't work as well, they have to go in multiple applications. People don't realize that. So at the end of the day, your food's still getting sprayed.
Right.
You still need to wash it, like all that stuff. Like it's such a misconception, and they're paying so much for this. And like, I'm sorry, but food prices are already like expensive. So adding organic on there, and when you hear people being like, "Well, I'm eating organic," and it's like you're still getting the same nutrition, you're getting the same value, you're just paying more for a product, really.
Yeah, and I think that it's this fear idea, and I appreciate that we've missed things in science before. And people will always go to cigarette smoking, and that's a clear one. But it's also like we didn't have the scientific research we had back then, and now we have a lot. And so, I mean, the only argument a lot of people will have is, "Oh, who funded it?" But it's like, okay, but we have something. Like you got to trust some level of the research. Otherwise, you're just going on your own whim, and you could be wasting a lot of money, a lot of effort, and a lot of time, and making up reasons why you can't lose weight because you're just so focused on the wrong thing, stepping over dimes, stepping over $100 bills to pick up dimes, right? Because you could just eat the other fruit, and it's fruit at the end of the day. Like you say, you got to wash it anyways. I didn't know it was sprayed more. That's actually news to me. And I was also told that because they still use some chemicals, but they're like a level that is appropriate to use the term organic. And a good portion, I'm not sure if it's still this, but I've heard they've been tested and not even passed a test. But some of these companies don't even pass it, but they'll still use that brand. Is that correct?
That is correct. And really, to get organic, like, to be honest, conventional farming, I know like the field cannot be sprayed for at least 5 years offhand, I believe, to be considered organic and for them to grow organic crops on there. But and I know that's Canadian practice, but US, I'm not entirely sure. But it, yeah, like it's a money grab in my opinion. That's my honest opinion there. And it's just something that really got heightened and elevated, especially with the whole Monsanto thing and stuff like that. Now, I know there's probably more research that's going to come out of that, especially with what's going down in the States, everything else. We'll see what gets revealed, because maybe I'm being taught something wrong, or what's being shared is not accurate. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that is a valuable thing, right? Like it's a difficult position to be in when you're trying to be a nutritional educator, when you're like, you want to trust the system because neither of us have the time to go and challenge that system and say, hey, does this actually produce this? And FDA is going to miss some shit. They definitely do. But, when you see a pool of evidence of multiple studies, then you can start to hedge your bets. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some things that I know I'd heard about where there was like basically, I think it was with Alzheimer's, and it was it was essentially this specific particle that was in a research article, and all of this different pharmaceutical drugs were going after this one particle, and it was that original article was completely falsified, and it was like 20 to 30 years of like research down the can. And it was like, no one knew. And so there's always this suspicion of like, oh, well, what are they not telling you? It's like, but what if we also do understand that we can handle some of these pesticides and you can wash it off and it can feed you? Like, what if that's also an option? And like, I mean, it's difficult for both like the individual buying it at the market, knowing what to trust, and us trying to educate, right? Because it's like, we just want this, like, for sure. If you're overweight, we know that that's going to be an issue long term. There's for sure stuff we don't know. I would just encourage you to hedge your bets, certainly wash your fruits and vegetables, but just like it's probably most likely not going to give you cancer if you're otherwise a healthy individual. It's your best chance of not getting cancer. And so, I mean, that's usually the education that you try to provide. And let's dive into it, because you mentioned the Maha movement a little bit in the States. I think it's a valuable thing for all people in the industry to kind of discuss how they feel about it. And I would love to hear kind of the way you see it, just from your viewpoint.
So I have like mixed emotions. Some of it I'm really intrigued about, but I'm also wondering how he is going to treat the state of agriculture. Now, I do definitely support more smaller farms, smaller guys, etc. I think that's the way versus getting these mega farms that are really established in the States, especially, and maybe they're cracking down on what's going on there. But I think, you know what, he's probably gonna bring out stuff that has been hidden from the public eye, like JFK, and I think that's gonna be beneficial there. And you know what, if they can make America healthy again, that's pretty cool. But there's definitely like nuances where it's like, okay, if they actually start making McDonald's fries and tallow, is that gonna make the system better? Probably not, because it's still going to have fat in it and it's still deep fried, and like people are just going to be eating copious amounts of fries and now tallow. Like, I think there needs to just be a higher level of education in our health system, because again, a doctor gets, I don't even know how much nutrition coaching or education. It's very limited. I understand that. Let alone like even hearing some of the freak stories in Canada on how they treat people that have type 2 diabetes, and they're still very much practicing, or they don't even recommend eating high protein for those individuals yet. It's just cut your carbs down really low. They don't mention about fiber and stuff like that. Like I've had a client that was dealing with that, and there's gaps in the system, and it's like, okay, maybe we can start filling in those gaps, right?
I
So
totally agree. Yeah.
yeah.
The gaps is the big thing. But you mentioned there, this is like where the whole industry needs to improve. You
Mhm.
have the thing with RFK is he's kind of like great shape. The guy's fit, the guy's jacked, like he's living that healthy life. But then he's also talking about these kind of fear mongering things, like you mentioned around beef tallow versus seed oil. I lost all respect for him. Like when I heard that, I'm like, you come to all these podcasts talking about research, and then I've seen him get picked apart on them. But that one alone, I don't even need to be a super like well-educated PhD to know that like you're not looking at research at all. If you're talking this, like this is the thing that's going to fix everything. If you're talking about literally switching an oil with an oil and saying it's going to make health, America healthy again, I don't understand where you're coming from. Unless some reason you believe that when they eat this beef tallow soaked French fry, they're magically going to stop eating it, because that's what they would need to do. They would need to stop eating
Yeah.
so much of it. So maybe the fries taste like shit. But other than that, I don't see it helping. And so you have that problem that this guy doesn't look at the research. Now, okay, let's look at the research community. Well, what are we talking about when we're looking at Canada's Healthy Food Guide and then American Healthy Food Guide? Low protein. Like, why are we still fucking talking about low protein? You
Yeah.
find me someone who actively works with people, not dietitians, but I'll say the unregulated term nutrition coaches. You find me a nutrition coach that doesn't want high protein, you're looking in the very far niche of like 5 to 10% of people. 90% of people know that you need that protein number high, and there is evidence to support it. So why is it that the people that, because that's where the health ministers have to come from. They have to go from whatever the most current research is, along with the food guide. That's what they're going to go with. And for some reason, we're not doing it. And I do think it's terrible if that you have health ministers that's obese. Like, I mean, at very least, overweight, I know there's an argument what overweight is, but obese, we know that doesn't help you live healthy. We know that, right? Like we know the probability is low. So when you have this issue of, okay, good intentions, like you say, I'm with you. I hope it's a net benefit. I hope that he's gonna like start to, you mentioned, make sure these companies doing the research are very accountable to what's going on, and that they can't bullshit, because it could be happening and we don't know it. But at the same time, he needs to look into what he is believing that is bullshit. And if you can't do that, it's going to be a shit show. I don't know what to expect. So I'm with you on most of that. Like it's just going to be a very interesting 3 to 4 years. And from what I've seen, it's also kind of alarming how much they're preventing research going out. They're preventing some progression of things. So I don't know what the backup's going to be or anything. It's going to be very interesting. And I'd love to end it off with the idea. Let's even talk post that, like the post Omaha movement in general, because I think there's a lot of big things coming up, especially around GLP-1s and AI. And I'm open to any estimations that you have or guesstimations you have around the fitness and nutrition industry. Where do you think this goes? What do you think happens? And I'm just very open to your view.
So honestly, GLP-1s, I think there's a fit. And how I see it is that you can't just be on a GLP-1. You have to learn how to eventually get off of it. And that means learning about your diet, your nutrition, and implementing strength training. Because if you just go on a GLP-1 and you undereat, you're not just losing weight, you're losing substantial amount of muscle mass. And take it from the person that had HA and was freaking out that she's going to start getting osteoporosis at like age 30. We don't need people experiencing that and becoming brittle and frail. And actually, I listened. I'm a big fan of the Mind Pump guys. They share some actually really good research on there too. But they were basically stating that somebody that is small and frail is actually more unhealthy and prone to like injury and stuff, if I remember correctly, than somebody that is strong and maybe overweight, because they're able to actually withstand a bit more and they have that muscle foundation. So we're going to have a bunch of people that maybe are on GLP-1s, and sure, they'll be skinny, but they're not going to be strong. And that was something I really had to change in my mentality, because I chased being strong or skinny for so long in my life. That was my goal. Whereas now it's totally shifted of like strength. I want to be strong. I want to be able to take care of myself as I get older. Don't need somebody helping me in the bathroom. I want to be able to do that on my own, right? So, like, we really need to start advocating and educating people that they need to incorporate strength training, and they still need to prioritize protein, which, again, like speaking on our food recommendations, they recommend a basic amount of protein basically for survival, is my understanding.
Yeah, it's existence. Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to reevaluate that, because if that's what they're doing, are they maybe trying to keep us not healthy? You start going down that rabbit hole, and it's like you question things, because like, why wouldn't they want to make us better, right?
Mm-hmm. So I have a theory on that. I mean, you're somewhat in the agriculture industry, you might appreciate it. I believe that they don't recommend more protein because it looks like it is too pro meat. And I think there are a lot of the food industry that is pro processed food. And if you start to do that, it looks pro meat, even though you can go plant-based meats. I think it's too pro meat. And like you mentioned, it basically, so people understand, it's like it's a nitrogen balance. It's an old, archaic system of looking at optimizing your amount of protein. And that's where they get this 0.8 per kilogram of body weight, and it should be 0.8 per gram of body weight, or per not kilogram, per pound of body weight. And again, ton of research, like fat loss, if that's a goal, it's there. This is clearly the problem. And they'll even say, the recommendations will say, okay, if you don't exercise, you can get away with like 1.2. If you have some exercise, like 1.3, and every other population you name, if you're exercising intensely so many times a week. And it's funny because it's like, well, they want you to strength train. They want you to do cardio. You don't have to call yourself an athlete. You just should do that. You should be eating like an athlete technically. And then you talk about like older populations, they need more because they can't actually absorb protein as much. A growing kid, they need more because they're growing. And so it makes no sense. But my assumption is, honestly, it's political, because even from like the get-go, like it used to be that they would have the meat area, and now it's like meat and alternatives, and that to me was very much a political stance of, hey, you can have plant-based stuff. Now, if they go ahead and they shift that serving size to be higher protein, then it's going to look like they're in with the meat industry, right? Or the dairy and meat. And I just think it's like, it's going to be difficult for us to get around that, the politicizing of nutrition. It really is. But I genuinely believe that it could really change people's attitudes and health. I'm not saying you solve all health problems, but at least makes people really open to appreciating it. And like you mentioned, it's crazy that dietitians aren't the ones that like are telling you, hey, you need more protein. Like that doesn't make sense. When I know some people in the hospital right now, they're handing them Boost and they think that it's extra protein. Yeah, I'm having these Boosts. I'm like, it's milk. Like, I mean, if you had
Yeah.
regular milk, you'd have more protein. And
You'd be better off. Yeah.
yeah. And it's just like, but they think they're having protein because that's what they provide there. And again, like if you're you have someone bedridden in a hospital trying to get better, it's like they need real protein. Like at least get the high protein boost. Like there's other forms of it. But unfortunately, it's just the state that we're in, right? And I love that you mentioned though about the GLP-1s and people need to appreciate. Like I was listening to this one guy who did a whole breakdown on it. He's like describing the food they used to eat. I'm like, you said that you did all these diets, but you just had a terrible breakfast. Like you would go in and have an apple fritter and like a double double. Like, and then of course you went on GLP-1 and like that. Yeah, you didn't even try to really solve your problem if that's your idea of a breakfast. And so there is going to be a huge issue. And, we're both in the group and Jordan's talked about how it's like there's going to be more priority for protein and weight training. There definitely has to be. I am optimistic with them. I think there's certain people that just have too much food noise. I think that's just a real big thing. It's hard for some people to digest it because they call it cheating and stuff. And it's like, look, you just don't know what it's like for some people. And if I wasn't a trainer in fitness and obsessed over this, I would for sure be overweight, if not obese, if I was any other line of work, because I love food. And so if I didn't take time to appreciate all this stuff and to work through all this stuff mentally and physically, I don't know where I'd be. And I always say that if you think it's a matter of will, you don't know enough hardworking, overweight people in your life. And I know several. I know people who are so fixated in their career and their path. Yes, they're overweight, sometimes obese, but I wouldn't dare call them not hardworking people because they work harder than I do, but they're so niche focused. And to add in this other stuff, this other stress, fat loss is hard. So to me, that those are the people that I am advocate for using GLPs to get them on the right track, but still, like you mentioned, eventually getting off it and still appreciating the habits that go around it. So again, optimistic. We'll see where it goes. Let's finish it off with one last thing here on you personally. What is your most recent ambition?
Oh, goodness. I don't even know. I think just, you know what? I worked so hard to get where I am today and just that personal growth. I want to help other women genuinely. I want to help other women in particular. Again, I coach women. So find that peace, find that will to focus on getting stronger, not just smaller, and realize that you don't need to take the shortcuts. And if I could scream that at the top of my lungs and get more open and share my own personal experiences, which I'm slowly doing more and more on social media. It's tough some days. If I could just relate to more women and help them realize that you don't need to just chase being small and really just focus on getting stronger, you'll start seeing results. And it's amazing how letting go of those old mentalities, those old mindsets that were constantly preached, especially if you grew up in the 90s, 2000s, that was drilled into us left, right, and center of just, eating as little, moving as much, less is more, all that stuff. If I can help break that down and be like, you don't need to eat as little as possible to achieve your results, then I think I'm winning and I'm helping one more person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they can pass that message along on the way, or I can inspire somebody else to get on track. But I think that's really what my main goal is just to help as many people as I can. Excuse me. Help as many women as possible as I can, and just help them realize that it doesn't have to be made as hard as we were taught.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be.
Yeah, I think that's a very valuable message. It's actually the hard is a little hard for a long time, not really hard for a short time. And it's actually harder because it's longer. But if you find that right little mix, the interesting thing too is this is what the corny saying of it is a lifestyle approach. Like we're trying to evolve your life because even after you lose the weight, not much changes. You get to eat a little bit more, but you should be enjoying that process so much that now you just get to eat a little bit more. And there's still going to be times where you use calorie deficits again in your life, right? So
Yeah.
it's that whole picture. But I think that's great. I think that's a wonderful message. Thank you so much, Melissa, for being on here. Why don't you tell people where they can find out more about you?
Yeah, thanks again, Rylan, for having me. This is really cool and a really good discussion. I like kind of where it went along the lines.
Sure.
You can find my main social media is my Instagram account at the Fit and Field Life, Melissa Ostash. You search my name or my username, and I'll pop up there. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Melissa.
Thanks, Ryland.
Thanks again to Melissa. I really enjoyed that conversation. Her journey of losing 120 pounds was awesome. Anytime someone has substantial weight change, I'm so fascinated by it because I didn't have to. As I mentioned in the episode, I came from gradually changing my body composition as I was actually coming out of puberty. And so I naturally had some growth benefit, but I didn't have to vastly change who I was as an identity. And that's what you have to do when you're losing that weight. You talk about identity, talk about the challenge of having friends actually tell you that they miss the old you. Now, if I were to educate a guest, because I have had friends like this, in that they don't like to see you do things that they would be uncomfortable doing. And especially if it's around drinking, as she mentioned that if she was social around Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, in college or whatever, that's where the friends can be like, I miss the old you. I miss the old you. And I once did a whole year of no drinking. One of my best friends to this day didn't support it the entire time. He always tried to push me on it. He never liked that I was doing it. And ironically, it was the weekend before the end of the year where I was like, it doesn't even matter. Like people know I basically did it. And if he would offer me a drink, so you want to just drink now? You want to just, if you were like, man, it doesn't fucking matter. He actually didn't try for the first time, which was pretty funny. But the main thing there is I got used to being different. I got used to being different at every single social occasion. You're not drinking? No. Now, I usually would give people the reason and purpose of boxing because they wouldn't argue it. And I was on and off on boxing that year, and I did have boxing as a good reason. But it also made people a lot more uncomfortable, especially at that point in time, if you were a person not drinking. Nowadays, it's actually getting a lot better. If you just say, hey, I'm a person not drinking, people accept it. They're like, oh, you care about your health. Health is a really important topic nowadays. And it's not so faux pas that, oh, you're not drinking. I got hockey. I'd say a quarter of the guys, if not, but a quarter of guys in my hockey team don't even have a beer. And no one second guesses. 5-10 years ago, it was like, oh, why aren't you drinking? So social pressures are going to change, but no matter what, social pressure is evident. You're always going to have a reason and an excuse to have a friend that suggests something. Even if Angelina brings something around, that doesn't mean I have to have it. So it's super important that you realize that when you're changing your identity, you do have to change part of it. And if a friend has a problem with it, you just got to confront them and say like, hey, a part of me doesn't want to do this all the time. Can I just drink with you once a week? Or if people are busier, can I drink with you every month maybe, or go out with you every month? It doesn't have to be all the time. And then that's when you know you have a friend because they're supporting something that really matters. And then dealing with an aggressive diet coach. This is a super important thing. People can do this themselves, and it's even worse when someone you're paying is guiding you to that far end. Now, I know what it's like from a coach's perspective when people feel pushed too hard. But that is an important conversation. Hey, you're feeling pushed too hard? Then don't push that hard. It's about pushing the right amount of hard, as I'd mentioned. It's all about the right calorie deficit, the right amount of challenge. And if your energy levels aren't there, if you're not enjoying the diet, if you feel like you just can't sustain it, then you shouldn't do it. And so it's super important for yourself if you ever do hire a coach, or if you're trying to coach yourself and it's like, this feels too hard to sustain, then this is a bad sign. This is not where you want to be. And to get to the point where it's amenorrhea, which, losing your menstrual cycle as a female is terrible, super unethical. And here's the other really important question to ask yourself, or if the coach challenges you on this. She had a goal weight. She's 5 pounds away. what does that fucking 5 pounds matter? If she has lost 20 pounds and she has 5 more pounds to go, does it really matter? Like, is she stepping on the stage? Is it competitive or is it lifestyle? Because and even if it is competitive physique, like they don't care about your weight, they care about what you look like. So it's super important to have context so that what the goal matters. And I used to really get caught up in weight. And now I realize, no, I just really want to know when I feel good and when the duration of my deficit is appropriate for me. So it's super important to consider that in terms of, the healthy relationship that you're having with your journey, especially because it can affect your hormones. I think it is super important. And I think this gets overlooked for both male or female and male is the importance of having enough fats. I do think that this is something that doesn't get addressed enough. And it's just a fundamental rule of thumb of having somewhere around 20% of your total calories coming from fats. And if you try to go low fat, you're trying to go with leaner meats, ends up being more challenging than you might think. And you might need to add more fats in. And honestly, this is where the nut butters actually can be very helpful because then you can beef up the total amount of fats in your diet. I really love the fake health food conversation. If it's really trying to promote how healthy it is, I've said this for years. If a food is in a container and it's trying to tell you how healthy it is, really question it. Because an apple doesn't advertise that it's healthy. Strawberries don't have to tell you there's vitamin C in them. Most lean meats are just lean meats. We just know that it's going to be good for you. But sometimes there's things in boxes and packages that say, hey, this has this, this has this. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes things are going to be a source of fiber. Some things are, maybe they actually do include omega-3s in certain things, but question it is the main point. And especially when you look at like a granola bars, I've never been a fan of granola or granola bars. They're just energy dense. And so I do think that there's fake health foods. I just even think that the term healthy attached to food is kind of a real like dichotomous way of thinking, like this is healthy or unhealthy, because healthy has a lot to do with how you treat it. Are you having too much of it or are you having enough of it? Because enough of a certain thing is going to be healthy. And if you have too much, you are something. Yeah. Undoing it. Unhealthy, right? Is to go backwards in health. And you could have a ton of granola. If you have a ton of granola, you are undoing the health of how you could benefit that meal. Now you can make granola healthy. Absolutely. You can make granola bars healthy because it actually is a feature of your diet that balances out the way you want it to. But if you have too much of it, it is undoing the health benefit. And that's the way that I would recommend that you think about it. I think organic food is overrated. I do really love that she addressed that. I mean, we mentioned it, like if the research comes out that we're wrong, awesome. I think then we'll stop having all this other food. And right now it's just a money grab. I think it's almost like what I really refer to as nutritional elitism, where it's like, hey, if it's not organic, it's not grass fed and not grain, instead of being grain finished, all this stuff. Well, here's the funny thing about grass fed. Grass fed has no nutritional benefits. It might be a leaner meat, but it's a more expensive meat and the omega-3 ratio is slightly better, not dramatically better. So having grass fed doesn't even mean anything. The best argument I think you have for how something is raised has more to do with ethical concerns. And so if it's like a free range chicken, if it's like free range chicken eggs, I think that makes sense. There might be eventually evidence to suggest the quality of eggs could affect how people react to eggs. And this is an anecdotal thing I've heard on the internet. So, chalk that up with whatever level of evidence you want to give it. But like, say someone has a sensitivity eggs and then they have more free range eggs that are like pasture raised and all that stuff, but they don't have the sensitivity then because they were fed a better diet. And that's possible. The other major thing is to consider that the cheaper the egg, the worse the chicken had its like lifestyle. And I am fully guilty of eating these eggs right now. It's where I'm at in my life. And if I could afford more eggs that are, the nice brown orange yolk, I would. But we got to, fight the battles that we can fight, right? Now, from there, fighting the battles you can fight, I do believe the Maha movement that you'll hear me talk about a lot, soaking things in beef tallow isn't going to fix anything. So I'm love that she addressed that. And the GLP-1s, I do think that this is going to be a really interesting evolution that we're going to see, because this is only the first wave of us really understanding that we can do things for pharmaceuticals and how we can actually change your food behaviors dramatically. Like, it is a diet pill essentially. It wasn't not a pill yet, but there are pills coming out, which is incredible. So you wouldn't have to inject it, and it's actually apparently less side effects, and it's like stages of development. So imagine the first iPhone, right? How big of a change the first iPhone, smartphones changed the world. That is now happening in the food industry when it comes to this diet pill. And the pill is around the corner, by the way. Right now, they're injections. The pill is currently in stage trials of being released. So now what you mentioned, and this has been mentioned in our mentorship, is like people have to concern themselves with strength training and protein, because there's a guy who did a book on it, and the GLP-1, and like, good or bad. And he actually weighed it out. I actually got to listen to the book. I haven't, but he discussed something really funny where he was describing his experience on it. He said he had done all the dieting and all this stuff, but then he described how he would start his morning every day with like a big, I think it was like an apple fritter or something like that. And he would start every morning with like, pastry and a coffee. I'm like, why? You're saying you did everything, but that's your breakfast like every day? Hey, we do that every weekend. We have cookies every weekend, but not every day. That's not a Monday thing, not a Tuesday thing. And if you're having a hard time losing weight, that's probably somewhere to start. But anyway, so within that whole thing, he then said, I didn't crave it. Now, here's an important thing. That's a problem, that he wasn't craving any sort of food or sustenance, because then he could just have a little bit of shitty food. He'd be like, oh, I'm not really craving it too much, but I'll have a small, pastry, and then not have enough protein throughout the day. So if you already don't have a good diet and then you're on GLP-1s and you're not training, it's going to be still a really shitty scenario. And I do believe that it's very likely we are going to see the future of strength training really be amplified, and protein really be amplified with these GLP-1s. And I think overall, this was a really fun conversation. I mean, we even discussed the problems with the food guide. I thought that was really fun. I still hold to it that if we could change the food guide, if the top-down approach, if the dietitians, more people spoke about it openly and give you more ideas and resources, and they could actually then give you more access to food, making lean meats cheaper, I think it would change the world. But, it's my muscle-centric mindset that I do have a bias for. Now, I'm not going to argue that. With that being said, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I had a ton of fun talking to Melissa. I think she's a great coach. She's got a lot of great info. So check out her Instagram. Check out all the info that she offers if you're interested in someone who's really concerned with female nutritional and hormonal health. And make sure you check out my very next podcast. It's going to come out in a couple of weeks here, because I'm going to go over a lot. I got a lot of updates for you. I'm going to be discussing the cookie challenge as I finish off the cookie challenge. I got the body composition to walk through. And I am also going to be doing my powerlifting competition this week. Now, when this is the week this episode is released, I have my powerlifting competition for the first one this weekend. And so I'll be telling you all the details of that. I'll tell you about the evolution that I've taken on this, being able to get ready for my first powerlifting meet, which has been exciting, and how I hopefully have a couple. And we'll have more Q&A, and it'll be a really fun episode. So make sure you check that out, and that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks here. But as always, I just got to thank you as a listener. Please, if you can, share this with someone. Leave a 5-star review. It means the world to me. Like, it's the one thing that could really help this podcast slowly grow over time. If you really appreciate these, please try to leave some sort of review, and sharing it with someone will go a long way. But either way, I just got to thank you as a listener, and give me your time, give me your ears, and give me your attention so I can help you chase what you're ambitious about, because we know life is not about the pursuit of happiness, but rather the happiness within your pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.